Yarare. Action.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So you can start to let the energy kind of settle again. We endeavored to read by sight a passage from Digha Nikaya 2, which we've been working our way through, the Samaññaphala Sutta. And this was one of the richest sections, I think, in the sutta, talking about the hindrances and these similes for the hindrances, these images that help us call to mind what these feel like, how they're experienced, show up in other places in the canon, but this particular sutta has everything, it's just very fleshed out. And so, going along with the theme, why we're looking at this sutta during this week is appreciating how the mind is prepared for samadhi. And now we've been sitting for several days. I think this is actually day 4. Mind very naturally be getting more calm, simply from having less input. In previous days, we've talked about those things that we can direct the mind to as aspects of transcending, where we find that our mind previously was in a state of seeking conditioned temporary happiness, from getting, from having, from being. And there's a moment of transcending, of remembering that there is this unconditioned happiness. The first, most pervasive, is when we've heard the Dhamma. Before we've heard the Dhamma, we're ignorant. But having heard the Dhamma, we know there is a path. And for every moment past that, where we still draw breath, we have this form of happiness, the happiness of not being one who is not hurt, not being trapped in samsara with no opportunity of a way out. We've been exposed to the truth, and we can no longer go back to being ignorant. Second kind of happiness comes through the cultivation of sila. And in this, we give up those patterns of behavior which we can develop. Faith always have an unpleasant result. Killing, stealing, cheating, lying. And the whole section on sila, it's vast. All of the things we could willingly give up in order to make our lives more peaceful. And just sitting and reflecting on all of the things we could be doing with our time that would in the end just draw us further into samsara. But simply that we're not can be a source of joy. We have a moment here of peace, of tranquility, of safety, of harmony. It's not random. This peace is caused by our choices. Had we chose differently, we would not have that peace in this moment. Yesterday, Bhante was kind enough to detail the next stage, which is known as the gradual training. Or we begin practicing, we begin recognizing there is a greater level of peace that can be attained if we're willing to apply ourselves. So now we're even transcending the idea that peace is merely a quality of subtraction, of reducing the bad things. But now we're seeing there are skillful patterns we can begin to take up. These in their way counteract unwholesome patterns, but they result in the same kind of pervasive, unconditioned happiness. Following Sila, we have sense restraint, realizing that directing our mind inappropriately will cause us confusion, difficulty, anger. We simply are mindful at the sense bases. Our mind remains steady, cultivating mindfulness and clear comprehension. And finally, developing contentment. All of these things are good in and of themselves. The Buddha says Sila creates a blameless happiness. Sense restraint creates an unsullied, unblemished happiness. Mindfulness and clear comprehension create mindfulness and clear comprehension, which in and of themselves are joyful. These are forms of happiness, which once we've put in the effort to cultivate these things, we have in a steady and consistent way. And now we look at the hindrances and we realize what more can be done with application. The section on the hindrances begins with looking at the aspect of desire. So though there are 5 hindrances with different qualities, with different affects, they begin with one quality: desire for the world, desire for experience in the world, desire to get, to have, to be. Sitting down in a quiet place, giving ourselves a chance for formal meditation. We're letting that go. We're cultivating that kind of kamma, that kind of activity that isn't about getting something. It's not about getting ahead. It's about looking to stabilize our mind and improve our situation. And in this effort, we can start to see what it is that's holding our mind back from the highest levels of peace. It's the very way that our mind works. It's the very way that it tries to approach life and tries to understand things, tries to solve problems. There are skillful ways and there are unskillful ways. And it can be very pernicious, insidious, hard to spot the patterns which lead us into continual forms of suffering. Sense desire, desire for sensual experience, is like being in debt. Ill will is like having something akin to an undiagnosed disease, feeling not right but not really knowing why. Sloth and torpor, the dullness of the mind, is likened to being trapped in prison, not being able to do anything or go anywhere. Restlessness and worry are likened to being a slave or a servant, being told what to do and having no choice in the matter. And doubt is likened to being on a dangerous journey or lost in the woods. Danger around every corner, not knowing if we'll get to safety. Before we really start to look at the hindrances, it can be difficult to appreciate how pervasive these mind states really are. It's one of the great turning points of the mind and the development of the mind. So until we have gotten past these 5 hindrances, we really can't conceive of what it would be like to have a mind without the 5 hindrances. Really can't conceive of what it would be like to have a mind that is not rushing about, is not agitated, is bright and engaged with what's happening in the present moment. We can't think our way into this. Just in the way as if we acquire a debt, we can't think or beg our way out of it. We just have to get a job, we have to work, we have to make money, and we have to pay off the debt. If we're ill, we've got a disease, we have to research it, we have to talk to doctors, and we have to accept their prescription. Take it diligently until we get better. Being in prison, there's no talking our way out of it. We get out when our sentence is served. Likewise with being a slave, there are conditions to meet before we get our freedom. And doubt, if we're on a journey, we're on a journey. Stopping and spinning in circles and saying, oh, when will I get there? It doesn't get us to the destination. There's energy to be applied, seeing the hindrances, recognizing them, and seeing how they hijack the mind. They leave us in a state of constant work, of always being separate from our goals. Our goals are always out there in the future. Or when I get free of this debt, or when I get over this disease, or when I get out of prison. The amazing thing is, these are just mental patterns. They can end in an instant. But we have to see them for what they are. And it actually takes quite an effort, because we have thought in this way our entire lives. And even if we've got a good sense of samadhi practice, if we've done a lot of meditation, even still, the mind falls back into these patterns so easily. Sometimes take hours or even just minutes before they arise again once they've gone silent. So we've got to get to know them. But the benefits of getting to know them and getting past them are unsurpassed. To say, if something's going wrong in our life, we can almost certainly point to the 5 hindrances. The Buddha outlines all of craving, attachment, becoming, birth, aging, and death. All of this is generated by ignorance. But one monk asks, but what conditions ignorance? And the Buddha says, it is these 5 hindrances. If we don't know where to look, if we don't know how to apply ourselves, if we misapprehend a situation, then the next moment we are ignorant of the truth. Stepping off from the 5 hindrances is like suddenly realizing we're free of debt, or that we're healthy. It can just suddenly dawn on us that there isn't anything left that needs to be done. Nowhere left to go. There's no longer any dangers. And this again is a kind of unconditioned happiness. When we have the hindrances, we're being told continuously, do this thing and you will get your happiness. Just do this thing and you will get your happiness. But the moment we let the hindrance subside, the moment we see through it and stop entertaining it, there's nothing more to be done, there's nothing more to get. And the mind sits bright, safe and secure on the other side, ready for samadhi, ready for what's to come, which is in the next section, the jhanas, the heightened levels of samadhi in which the mind enters a completely wholesome state. This is something that cannot happen until the hindrances subside, because they are those things that condition ignorance. We cannot have a mind free of ignorance until the things that condition ignorance have gone quiet. So just looking for this, looking for any moment of this in our practice as we sit, any moment where one of the hindrances is not present, can give us an idea of this quality of liberation. This sense of what it's like to not have anything that needs to be done, to not have anything that needs to be endured. Maybe at first that we're just seeing the quieting of individual hindrances, but other ones are still present. The more of a handle we get on this, the more we start to see those moments where all five have gone quiet. And this is as this section starts. That means that desire for the world has gone quiet. Maybe not that it's gone completely, that we've realized that it is a source of suffering. It's not that the thing we desire to get rid of, is what's causing suffering. That desire itself is suffering right there, and when it goes quiet, so does suffering. And the mind can enter a peaceful, blissful state of unconditioned happiness, steady, powerful happiness. So these similes and this discussion about the hindrances, it's always there in the Pali Canon, just waiting for us. The fifth hindrance of doubt is dispelled by not being confused about what is skillful and what is unskillful. So if at any time you're wondering why your meditation is waffling, I encourage you to go back and look at these similes. Remind yourself, get clear about what it is to be done, what is skillful, what is unskillful, and then get right back on the path. All right, so these are some thoughts for reflection tonight to help keep us going in our practice. We've still got more auspicious days with which to practice.
Hangamayang sadhukarang dhamma uvada gatayo banamase. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.